The silver ship descended slowly, its engines humming softly like a distant lullaby across the royal courtyard of Zarethia. The twin moons of the planet cast pale light on the crystal towers, making them shimmer like frozen stars. Inside the palace, Princess Leora sat quietly in her private chamber, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. She was known throughout the royal courts for her gentle, timid nature, a princess who rarely raised her voice or spoke boldly. Yet today, she felt a strange mix of anticipation and fear, emotions she had never experienced so strongly. Today, he comes, she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. Her long, delicate fingers smoothed her hair, though it did nothing to calm the flutter in her chest. She had read the reports about the human warrior. Captain Aiden, they called him. A soldier from a distant star, a being of strength and courage known across galaxies for his skill and valor. He was different from anyone she had ever known, and even in her quiet, careful life she felt drawn toward him. The palace doors opened with a soft chime, and the guards announced the arrival. Leora's heart skipped. She walked slowly toward the grand hall, trying to keep her composure, but the gentle sway of her steps betrayed her nervousness. Each step toward the polished floors made her more aware of the pounding in her chest. Her mind tried to remind her that she was a princess, that she should remain calm and graceful. But the moment her eyes fell on him, all her carefully constructed control dissolved. Aiden stood there, tall and unwavering, his golden eyes scanning the room. There was something about the way he carried himself, steady, confident, yet careful not to overwhelm anyone, that made her breath catch. His presence filled the space, not with arrogance but with quiet strength. And to Leora, who had always lived in the shadows of her own timidness, it felt like a storm stirring inside her heart. "Princess Leora," Aiden said, his voice deep and smooth, yet carrying a warmth that seemed to wrap around her like a comforting cloak. He inclined his head in respect, the kind of gesture that made Leora feel both important and unworthy at the same time. She could barely bring herself to meet his eyes, and when she finally did, she felt her knees weaken just slightly. "Welcome to Zarethia, Captain," she stammered, her voice soft and trembling. She hated that her words came out so timid, that her hands were clumsy and her composure seemed to slip away the moment he was near. But Aiden did not seem to mind. He simply smiled, a gentle, understanding smile, and it made her heart race faster. He looked at her not with judgment but with genuine attention, as though every nervous gesture she made was meaningful and important. The guard stepped back, giving them space, but Leora barely noticed. All her focus was on him, the sound of his voice, the confidence in his stance, the way his eyes seemed to see her completely without pretense or fear. For the first time in her life, she felt truly exposed, not in a bad way, but in a way that made her aware of her own fragility and her own strength at the same time. Aiden took a step forward, closing the distance just enough for Leora to feel the warmth radiating from him. "I have heard much about you, Princess," he said quietly. "Your wisdom, your grace. Even across the stars, your name carries respect." Leora felt her cheeks burn. She lowered her gaze, suddenly shy and self-conscious. I'm honored, Captain," she whispered. She wanted to appear composed, to respond like a confident princess, but her hands were still shaking and her heart pounded so loudly that she feared he might hear it. Yet, to her surprise, he did not step back. He stayed patient and calm, and somehow that made her feel slightly braver. It was as if his presence, instead of intimidating her, was encouraging her to step out of her own timid shell, to face him not with fear, but with curiosity and trust. And though she did not yet understand why, Leora knew one thing. This human warrior, this stranger from the stars, had already changed her world. And in that moment, the timid princess felt a spark of something unfamiliar, something exciting, something frightening, and something entirely irresistible. The grand hall of Zarethia shimmered under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Light reflected off the polished floor, casting prismatic colors across the walls. Princess Leora walked carefully between the pillars, her steps quiet but her heart loud. Every time she looked toward Captain Aiden, her chest tightened, and a warmth spread across her cheeks she could not hide. She was a princess, taught to control her emotions, to remain calm and graceful at all times. Yet, around this human warrior, control seemed impossible. Aiden's eyes met hers as he approached, calm and observant. "Princess Leora," he said, bowing slightly in respect. The sound of his voice sent a shiver down her spine. It was firm yet gentle, carrying a sense of authority without arrogance. His golden eyes held a quiet intensity, but also a warmth that made her feel seen in a way no one had ever seen her before. She had never felt so aware of another person's presence, so conscious of her own heartbeat, so suddenly aware of how small and fragile she sometimes felt. "Welcome to Zarethia, Captain," she stammered, her voice almost breaking. She hated the weakness in her tone, the way her hands fidgeted with her gown, but she could not stop it. Every time he drew near, she felt exposed and delicate, like a flower trembling in a strong wind. She wanted to be composed, regal, and certain, yet her heart raced faster than her mind could control. Aiden noticed her unease, but instead of stepping back, he smiled softly. A smile that seemed to understand every unspoken thought in her mind. "I have traveled far," he said, "and yet no distance could prepare me for meeting someone like you." Leora's ears twitched nervously. She had expected respect, diplomacy, perhaps a formal exchange of greetings, but not this. This feeling of being truly noticed, truly seen. Her throat tightened. She lowered her gaze, hoping to hide her blush, but even as she tried to steady her voice, she could not stop her hands from trembling. You honor us with your presence," she whispered, her voice quieter than she intended. Aiden's eyes softened, and he took a gentle step closer, not to intimidate, but to offer reassurance. There was something in his calmness that made her want to trust him, to lean into the safety he seemed to radiate even though she barely knew him. "Your people speak highly of you, Princess," he said, gesturing toward the empty hall. "But I am more interested in meeting the person behind the title, the one who makes such quiet strength appear effortless." Her heart skipped. Behind the title, behind the crown, he saw her. And in that moment, Leora felt something stir deep inside her. Fear, curiosity, admiration, all tangled into a single dizzying feeling that made her cheeks burn and her hands shake. She was a princess trained to be poised. But Aiden made her realize that her timid nature was not a weakness. It was simply a part of who she was. The silence stretched for a heartbeat longer than either expected. Finally, she lifted her head and their eyes met fully. She saw in his gaze something rare. Acceptance without judgment, interest without pressure, and a strange warmth that felt like a promise. She wanted to speak, to say something clever or graceful, but words failed her. All she could do was nod slightly, letting her eyes meet his in quiet acknowledgement. Aiden, sensing her unease yet her courage, bowed once more. "It is an honor to meet you, Princess," he said softly. "I hope to learn much from you, and perhaps you will learn something from me as well." Leora felt a flicker of courage. Perhaps she could stand beside him, not just as a timid princess hiding in shadows, but as someone capable of thought, strategy, and even bravery. And even though her heart still raced uncontrollably every time he looked at her, she realized something thrilling. She wanted to be near him, to understand him, and maybe to be seen by him fully, without fear. As the royal guard stepped back to allow them space, Leora took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside her. The timid princess felt a strange excitement, one that was both frightening and irresistible. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing clearly. Captain Aiden had already left an indelible mark on her heart. The next morning, the sky over Zarethia was painted in pale gold and soft green as the twin suns rose over the palace. Princess Leora sat quietly in the strategy room, her fingers brushing the edges of the holographic map that hovered above the polished table. The humans called it a mission briefing, But to Leora, it was the first time she would truly see Captain Aiden in action, guiding and commanding with his usual calm and precision. Her heart fluttered as he entered. Aiden moved with a natural ease, placing his hands on the table and scanning the projected holograms of the outer colonies. "Princess," he said with a polite nod, "we have limited time. The Marauders will strike the northern outpost tonight. We must act quickly." Leora swallowed hard. She wanted to focus, to be calm and collected as a princess should be. But her thoughts kept drifting to him. The way he carried himself, the gentle steadiness in his voice and the quiet confidence in his gaze made her pulse quicken. Every instinct she had screamed to run, hide, or fidget nervously, but she forced herself to stand tall. "We can redirect the planetary defense shields toward the northern corridor," she suggested softly, her voice barely audible at first. She glanced at Aiden, expecting a sharp correction or a dismissive glance. But instead he leaned closer, to examine the map, his expression thoughtful. "That's a good idea," he said finally, looking at her with genuine approval. "It will slow the Marauders and buy us more time for our fleet to intercept them." "Your instincts are sharp, Princess. I trust your judgment." Her cheeks burned and she looked down at the floor. The sound of his praise was foreign to her, yet it filled her with a strange confidence she had never felt before. For the first time she realized that her timid nature did not make her weak. It gave her a perspective that even a seasoned warrior like Aiden could value. They worked together for hours, adjusting shields, planning fleet maneuvers, and coordinating defenses. Leora tried to focus on the mission, but she could not ignore the way Aiden's presence affected her. She noticed small details, the way he paused to consider her suggestions, the way he moved with quiet precision, and the way his eyes softened whenever they met hers. Her heart fluttered each time and she fought to keep her composure. As the sun climbed higher, Aiden finally straightened and gave a small smile. "Princess Leora, your insight is invaluable. You have a mind for strategy that rivals even our most experienced officers. I am glad to have you at my side." Leora's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, anything to respond, but the words caught in her mouth. Instead, she simply nodded, feeling a mix of pride and embarrassment. The timid princess inside her wanted to hide, yet another part of her, a braver, more curious part, longed to rise to the challenge. By midday, the plans were set. The shields would redirect the Marauders' path, and the fleet would be ready to intercept. Aiden turned to her one last time. "Rest for a moment, Princess. You have done well." Leora hesitated, then smiled faintly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that being near him was no longer just intimidating. It was inspiring. Somehow his presence made her want to be stronger, braver, and more confident. She wanted to contribute, to make a difference, and perhaps even to impress him in a way that was more than just her royal duty. As they left the strategy room together, side by side, she noticed how naturally he walked beside her, never rushing, never overbearing, yet always guiding. Every step made her heart beat faster. Every glance made her cheeks warm. She had never experienced such a mixture of nervousness and excitement before, and she did not understand it fully, but she knew it was real. And in that moment, Princess Leora realized something profound. This human warrior, Captain Aiden, had not only come to defend her planet, but he had unknowingly challenged her timid heart. He had made her feel alive in ways she had never imagined, and she could not deny the strange, thrilling pull she felt toward him. For the first time, she wondered what it would be like if she could truly stand beside him. Not just as a princess giving orders, but as someone brave enough to face the world, the stars, and perhaps even her own heart. The sun had begun to set over Zarethia, casting long golden shadows across the palace grounds. Princess Leora stood near the training courtyard, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She watched Captain Aiden move with effortless precision, demonstrating combat drills to the royal guards. Every strike, every dodge, every measured step he took was controlled yet fluid, a perfect balance of strength and grace. Leora felt a mixture of awe and nervousness as she observed him. "Princess," Aiden called softly, noticing her hesitant stance near the edge of the courtyard. "You must join us. Strength is not only measured by power, but by courage and practice. Come, step forward." Leora's ears twitched nervously. She had never trained in combat before, and the idea of standing beside this human warrior made her feel vulnerable in ways she could not explain. Her timid heart screamed at her to stay back, to hide, to avoid embarrassment. Yet something deeper inside nudged her forward. A curiosity, a desire to rise above her fears, and perhaps an unconscious wish to earn his respect. Taking a shaky step, she moved into the courtyard. Aiden smiled encouragingly, offering his hand. "I will guide you," he said simply, and the warmth in his voice made her pulse quicken. Leora accepted his hand, feeling the solid reassurance of his grip. For a moment all her nerves calmed, replaced by a quiet determination. The first attempts were clumsy. Leora stumbled over her own feet, dropped the training baton several times, and her movements lacked confidence. Each mistake made her cheeks burn with embarrassment, and she struggled not to retreat. Yet Aiden never showed impatience. He corrected her stance gently, adjusted her grip, and demonstrated the motion slowly, step by step. "You see, Princess," he said softly as he guided her through a series of maneuvers. "It's not about perfection. It's about learning, about understanding your own limits and then surpassing them." His words resonated deeply. Leora realized that strength did not mean being fearless or flawless. It meant trying, even when her timid nature whispered doubts. Slowly she began to move with more confidence. Her strikes grew sharper, her stance steadier, and with each small success a spark of pride ignited within her. Yet, even as she trained, every time Aiden's gaze met hers, her heart betrayed her. It raced, her ears twitched, and her hands tingled in ways that had nothing to do with the combat itself. She tried to focus, to channel her nervous energy into her movements, but being near him made calmness almost impossible. And for the first time in her life, Leora realized that someone's presence could be more overwhelming than any battle she had ever imagined. After hours of practice, she paused to catch her breath, leaning lightly against the edge of the courtyard. Aiden approached, wiping sweat from his brow. "You've done well today, Princess," he said sincerely. "Your form has improved more than I expected. You have a natural talent coupled with determination. That combination is rare." Leora felt her heart swell. His praise, simple yet genuine, made her feel capable and valued. It was a feeling she had rarely experienced, and the impact it had on her timid heart was profound. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I never thought I could do this. Thank you for believing in me." Aiden's smile softened. "You should believe in yourself. I only help you see what is already there." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and purple, Leora realized something. Her nervousness, her timid nature, her racing heart, they were not weaknesses. They were part of who she was. And with guidance, encouragement, and courage, she could transform those vulnerabilities into strength. For the first time, she understood that standing beside Captain Aiden was more than a duty. It was an opportunity. Not just to learn combat, but to discover her own potential, to challenge her fears and perhaps unknowingly, to allow her heart to feel things it had never felt before. And as they stood together in the quiet courtyard, the hum of the palace around them, Leora felt a strange thrill, a mix of excitement, fear, and hope. She was timid, yes, but for the first time she was also brave. The night air over Zarethia was heavy with tension. Dark clouds swirled above the twin moons, and the faint hum of the planetary shields filled the air. Princess Leora stood at the command balcony, her hands gripping the crystal railing tightly. She could see the enemy fleet approaching, distant sparks of energy glinting like stars in the void. Her heart raced, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and something else, something she could not name. Every time she caught sight of Captain Aiden moving among the royal guards, calm and precise, she felt her chest tighten and her pulse quicken. Princess Leora, Aiden said, stepping beside her, his voice low but steady. Trust your instincts. The shields will hold if we redirect the energy as planned. Your guidance is crucial. She nodded, swallowing hard. I will do my best, she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her nerves. She hated that she felt so fragile in the face of battle, yet somehow the thought of failing her people and disappointing him was even more unbearable. The first wave of marauders struck. Blasts of energy lit up the sky as the enemy ships fired at the outposts. Leora's fingers flew over the control panel, redirecting shield energy, calculating angles, adjusting frequencies. She had never imagined that she would be in such a position, guiding a battle in real time, and yet she did it. Every action measured, precise, essential. Aiden moved beside her, commanding the royal guards with calm authority, his voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon. Hold the line. Focus on the flanks. Leora, shields now. Leora followed his orders, feeling a surge of adrenaline. She realized that her timid nature, which had always made her careful and observant, was a gift here. She noticed weak points, predicted movements, and adjusted defenses with a clarity that even seasoned soldiers relied upon. And every time she glanced at Aiden, seeing him fight with skill and courage, her heart swelled with admiration. Yet the nervous, fluttering feeling in her chest never left. It intensified. A massive blast rocked the balcony, sending a shockwave through the crystal floors. Leora stumbled but quickly regained her balance. Aiden was already there, steadying her with a hand on her arm. Focus, princess. We are together in this, he said, his golden eyes locking with hers. The simple gesture steadied her, calmed her jittery nerves, and reminded her that she was not alone. Hours passed like minutes. The battle raged with unrelenting intensity, but Leora and Aiden coordinated the shields and the flee, flawlessly. She began to feel a strange exhilaration, a sense of power that came not from brute force but from strategy, observation, and courage. And amidst the chaos, she found herself thinking more and more of him, his calm, steady presence, his trust in her, and the way he inspired her to rise above her fears. Finally, the last of the marauders were repelled. The sky was lit with sparks and fading blasts, and the shields hummed softly in relief. Exhausted, Leora sank to her knees on the balcony, breathing heavily. Aiden knelt beside her, his hand brushing lightly against hers, not forcefully but in quiet reassurance. You did well, princess, he said softly, pride evident in his voice. Your decision saved countless lives tonight. Leora's ears twitched nervously and she lowered her gaze. I could not have done it without you, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Aiden shook his head, smiling gently. No, you were brave, focused, and decisive. I only helped you see what was already inside you. Her chest swelled with a mix of pride and awe. For the first time she understood that bravery was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. And as she looked at him, standing there amidst the fading chaos, she felt a thrill, a warmth, a dangerous fluttering in her heart. She realized with both excitement and confusion that she could not remain calm around him. Tonight, amidst the stars and the battle, Princess Leora discovered not only her courage but also the depth of her feelings. She was timid, yes, but she was also alive, aware, and irrevocably drawn to the human warrior who had stood beside her through fire and fear. The battle was over, and the sky of Zarethia glowed softly under the twin moons. The air smelled of ozone and scorched metal, a quiet reminder of the chaos that had passed. Princess Leora walked slowly through the palace gardens, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of the fight. She thought of the fleet, the shields, and Captain Aiden, the human warrior who had fought beside her, calm and unwavering. Even now she felt the familiar flutter in her chest whenever she imagined him, his golden eyes meeting hers, his steady presence beside her. Aiden followed a few steps behind, careful to give her space yet never leaving her side. The quiet of the garden was comforting after the roar of the battlefield, but it made Leora's nerves all the more evident. Every sound, every movement reminded her of him. She wanted to speak, to say something meaningful, but the words caught in her throat. She had never felt so exposed, so aware of someone else, and it frightened her. Finally, they reached a small marble fountain, the water glimmering under the moonlight. Leora stopped, resting her hands on the edge, and let out a shaky breath. I don't understand it, she admitted softly, her ears twitching nervously. I don't know why I feel so nervous around you. Aiden knelt beside her, his presence gentle, not imposing. Because you care, he said simply. Because your heart is alive. You are not used to trusting someone, but you did, and that is not easy for anyone, especially a princess taught to be cautious and timid. Her ears twitched and she lowered her gaze, unsure whether to feel embarrassed or relieved. I've never met anyone like you, she whispered. You make me feel exposed, strong and weak all at once. I don't know how to stay calm. Aiden smiled softly, reaching out to brush a stray strand of her hair from her face. Leora, he said, his voice tender yet steady, you don't have to hide your feelings with me. You don't have to be perfect or composed. I've never met anyone like you either. Timid or brave, nervous or confident, you are remarkable just as you are. Her heart raced faster, thumping wildly in her chest. For a moment she wanted to shrink back, to retreat into the safety of her timid shell, but something in his eyes, something in the calm honesty of his voice made her stay. She lifted her gaze, meeting his golden eyes fully for the first time. And in that gaze she felt courage she had never felt before. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Her voice was barely audible, but it carried the weight of her emotions. I've never felt this way. About anyone. Aiden's hand gently touched hers, not forcing, not demanding, simply offering connection. Then say nothing, he said softly. Just feel. That is enough. Leora's chest swelled with emotion. For the first time she allowed herself to feel completely, without shame, without hiding. Every nervous twitch, every trembling thought, every heartbeat that raced around him was real, and it was hers. And she realized that it was not something to fear, it was something to embrace. The soft sound of the fountain and the gentle rustle of leaves created a quiet world just for them. Leora leaned slightly closer, feeling the warmth of his presence, and allowed herself to be seen, not as a princess who must be composed, but as a young woman with feelings that were wild, tender and honest. Aiden's golden eyes held hers, patient, understanding, and gentle. Leora, he said softly, you are brave, stronger than you know, and even when you feel timid, your heart shines brighter than any star. You have nothing to fear with me. She let out a small, relieved laugh, one that was shaky but genuine. I think I understand now, she whispered. I don't need to hide. I can just be me. And in that quiet moment, under the twin moons, the timid princess felt a deep, new strength. She was nervous, yes, but she was also alive, aware, and open to something extraordinary, something that went beyond duty, beyond courage. Something that was hers and perhaps his too. For the first time she allowed herself to hope. The first rays of dawn spilled over the silver towers of Zarethia, casting the palace in soft golden light. Princess Leora stood on the balcony, her gaze sweeping across the city below. The night's battle and the quiet confessions in the garden had left her heart full, her mind racing, and her timid nature tempered by newfound courage. She had always felt fragile and small, but standing here beside the human warrior, she felt strong in a way she had never known. Captain Aiden approached quietly, his footsteps soft against the marble floor. He stopped beside her, offering a calm smile that seemed to melt the lingering tension in her chest. Leora's ears twitched and she felt her pulse quicken as she looked at him. Even after days together, she still found it difficult to stay calm in his presence. And yet she no longer feared it. Instead, she welcomed the fluttering warmth that came whenever he was near. You look different this morning, he said softly, his golden eyes meeting hers. Not just brighter in the sun, but braver, stronger. Leora's lips curved into a small smile. I feel different, she admitted, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. I'm still timid, yes, but I feel like I can face the world, the stars, and everything. She hesitated for a moment, then added, because you've helped me see myself. Aiden's smile widened slightly. And you've helped me too, Leora. Your courage, your wisdom, your heart, they are unmatched. You've reminded me that even in the most disciplined soldier, there is room for wonder, trust, and hope. Her heart swelled. She had never imagined that someone like him could see her, the real her, and value her in ways that went beyond her title or duty. She realized that her timid nature was not a weakness, it was part of her strength. Her ability to observe, to care, to feel deeply, had shaped her into a leader, a strategist, and someone worthy of respect. And now it had also shaped her into someone capable of love. The palace gates opened below, and Leora watched the citizens begin their day. She thought of the battles, the sleepless nights, the strategies she had guided, and the quiet moments with Aiden. Every moment had been a lesson, not just in courage or leadership, but in understanding her own heart. And standing here with him, she finally understood that bravery was not the absence of fear. It was embracing it, acting despite it, and trusting someone else to walk beside you through it. Aiden extended his hand, and she took it without hesitation. The simple touch sent warmth through her entire being. Shall we face today together? He asked, his tone gentle yet certain. Leora's ears twitched and she laughed softly, a sound filled with relief and joy. Yes, she said, her voice confident. Together. As they walked side by side down the balcony stairs, the wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, and the first light of the suns reflected in their eyes. Leora felt something shift inside her, a final shedding of doubt, of hesitation, of timidity. She was no longer just the timid princess who trembled at the presence of the human warrior. She was a leader, a strategist, and a young woman fully aware of her feelings, fully confident in her courage, and fully alive. Aiden glanced at her, noticing the change. You've grown so much, he said softly, pride and admiration in his voice. I knew you could. Leora met his gaze and smiled, the blush in her cheeks faint but warm. I grew because you believed in me, and because I dared to believe in myself. The citizens of Zarethia looked up as the princess and the human warrior appeared together in the courtyard, hand in hand. Whispers of respect, admiration, and awe spread like gentle waves. The timid princess had become a symbol of courage, not just for herself but for her people. And beside her, Captain Aiden stood, not as a distant hero but as her partner, her equal, her anchor. Under the twin moons and the rising suns, Princess Leora took a deep breath. She was still timid in some ways, yes, but now she understood the true meaning of bravery, trust, and love. And she knew that with Captain Aiden by her side, there was nothing she could not face. The galaxy,